Obviously, you've overcome some tumultuous times of late. Earlier this year, you were placed in a medically induced coma. Doctors said you didn't have a great chance of surviving. And first, let me say, we're so happy you're here with us. You look great.
Yes, we are.
How are you feeling?
Of course, because when the ref goes 1, 2,
I'm feeling much better.
Before 3, you get up.
Good. That is great to hear.
Yeah, 10 days of life support will change your way of thinking. So, actually, my biggest complaint, you'll be happy to hear, was they didn't have cable TV in ICU. So as soon as I was out of the coma and able to distinguish what was going on in my life, I demanded a room with cable TV so I could watch First Take, my favorite show.
I love that. They should have got you the ESPN app, Rick. But you mentioned it changed your way of thinking. How so?
Well, you know, it's hard to explain, but I've just always lived every day like there was no tomorrow, which, you know, basically I'm doing right now, but in a much more moderate lifestyle than I've lived. I just, you know, when I was wrestling, I loved what I was doing, and I had a great time afterwards. I had a great time while I was doing it. I loved traveling. I loved the camaraderie of the industry, and just actually, I can't say enough about the good part of what I was involved in with wrestling. I loved it.
Rick,
but right now, I'm, you know, go ahead.
Yeah, I said, listen, it's great to see you. I want to ask you, because this 30 for 30 documentary, Nature Boy, coming out tonight, you open up about your life. Talk to us about why you felt the need. It seems like it feels like a need for you to do this at this particular juncture. Talk about why you felt compelled to tell this story.
Well, when they asked me to do it, Rory, the director, Rory Karff, he knows a lot about wrestling, so, and he knew a lot about me. Pretty much my life is an open book anyway, but he wouldn't take no for an answer. So I just said, you know, if he wants to go with it, I'll go with it. And I'm happy I did. Certainly there have been some times in my life when I was not proud of what I was doing. I think I'm reminded by all my children during the documentary that, you know, I wasn't home enough. I didn't pay enough attention to my family. Not that anybody wanted or anything. I mean, cars, I mean, it wasn't a financial issue. It was a hands-on time-wise with my children and benefiting from the time that I had with them. And I was not there for that. I was in Tokyo one night, St. Louis the next, Sydney, Australia, Auckland, New Zealand, back to St. Louis. One time my accountant called me and said, "You got 386 days that you worked here." I said, "Yeah, I worked twice on Saturday and twice on Sunday, in case you've forgotten, and I'm wrestling an hour." One week I did 9-hour draws in 1 week. So I clearly, depending on what city, I exercised the right to go out and have a beverage afterwards.
Rick,
preferably in Atlanta or Chicago.
Rick, first of all, 10-year-old Max is so psyched right now because, you know, you watch someone like you were larger than life when I was a kid. And to be now on a show where Ric Flair, the Nature Boy, says that this is his favorite show is quite a moment. 10-year-old Max is like flipping out right now. But you said, is that part of when you just described your schedule?
It's the truth. I mean, you could.
Go ahead.
Let me tell you something. I'll walk into a bar or a restaurant, not a bar anymore, and if they don't have First Take on, I'm not sitting down for lunch. That's the bottom line.
Rick,
and I'm not catching the afternoon edition. I'm catching the morning.
Love it. Thank you, brother. But when you said that you just described your schedule and the time away from the family and everything, is that what you meant when you said wrestling for you was like a disease? That you were addicted to it?
Yes, because there would be a time, you know, back in the old days where I would have a day off, but if a promoter saw that in my schedule, he would call the guy that booked me and say, you know, will Flair come that day? And instead of saying, guys, I got to go home, I went. I just felt obligated, and at that time, you know, to become the champion, there were 9 people that voted you in, and those guys knew who they were, and they clearly took advantage of the fact that I wouldn't take a day off as opposed to work for them if they needed me. as an example, in Puerto Rico, they celebrate Christmas. It's called Three Kings Day. So on Christmas, a couple times they wanted me to come to Puerto Rico. I didn't go home for Christmas. So you can imagine how that was received at home. So their Christmas Eve, but leaving that night, either on a private plane or early in the morning to get to San Juan. So I mean, that's
Hey.
the way it was. I just couldn't say no.
Rick, before we let you get out of here, I mean, listen, again, it's great to see you and to see, your health seems to be getting
Thank
better.
you.
I'm very happy about that. Got to ask you this question, though, from a strictly wrestling standpoint. Now, I grew up watching you when you were with the NWA. I mean,
Right.
Magnum TA,
Yes.
the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, my favorite tag team of all time, the Road Warriors. And obviously, I love the villain that the Four Horsemen were with you and Arn Anderson and the crew. Who is your favorite? I mean, when you think about walking into the arena, the glitz, the glamour, all the stuff that came with it, who is your favorite opponent, your most exciting opponent that you ever went against?
Good question.
Well, you'll love this answer because I'm sure you saw him with me. Back then, it was Dusty Rhodes, the most charismatic guy in the history of our business. The Dream was something else, and we drew money wrestling each other for 20 years. He oozed of charisma. He was smart. He was really good at choreographing and booking matches. He came up with a flair for the gold. He came up with Starrcade. He came up with the Great American Bash. Those are all themes that he came up with. And, that Great American Bash, we leave for 46 days and, go from one side of the country to the other. And, of course, the last week we'd just park ourselves in Vegas and fly the private jet to Seattle, back to Vegas, Portland, back to Vegas, Albuquerque, back to Vegas, LA, back to Vegas, Frisco, back to Vegas. So you can imagine how we felt flying home to stop in Kansas City to catch one more show. And I was running on Weeder products, man. It was rough.